Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mindset, Heartset, Reset. I'm so glad you could join us today. My name is Dr. Roshana Kashman, and I am your host for the show. My partner in crime, my co host, Jacqueline Way, is not with us today, so you'll have to make do with me. But I brought an amazing guest to make up for it, at least a little bit. You are in for a treat today. We're super excited to have you join us. So, Mindset, Heartset, Reset is a dynamic weekly show. We're here every week on the same bat time, same bat channel. It's on Tuesdays. And it's a show about cultivating compassion. It's a show where we nurture empowering mindsets. It's a show where we share authentic stories and practical tools. We make open hearted connections. And that helps us to hit the reset button on our lives and move forward in the direction that we want, and to create a better life for ourselves and for all those whom we touch. So we're super excited to have you join us for our continuing series that started last week on increasing happiness. We are so excited to have Dr. Stephen Post join us. You are, as I said, definitely in for a treat. Let me bring up Dr. Post's bio. Oh, yeah. Before I tell you a little bit about Dr. Post, let me tell you a bit about me and the show. So I am Dr. Roshana Kashmian. I am a computational clinical and behavioral neuroscientist and the founder of Access to the Path, where my work is as a transformational consultant and advisor. I combine as a clinical researcher and academic the power of science and I put in the context of emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence to create innovative and compelling new strategies that help individuals and businesses become more purposeful, more effective, more prosperous, more resourceful. Essentially, I help us elevate ourselves and level up to be the best version of ourselves, to be the best version of our businesses, and to bring forth the gifts and blessings that we all have with this beautiful knowledge that comes to us through science and helps us to bring forth all that we have within us so that we can be happy, so that we can be our best, and in doing so, help others to be happy and be at their best. And so, as we're talking about this happiness, as I mentioned, I'm flying solo today, but the topic that I'm discussing is absolutely incredible. We are talking, as I said, with Dr. Stephen Post on the happiness blueprint, awakening your bliss. So today we have answers to so many questions that people have, like how in the world am I supposed to be happy as the world is in such chaos and in such tumult right now? How can I do that? How can I increase my resilience? What do I do about the future? How do I develop better relationships? There's so many things that we want, and yet we don't know the ways to them. We don't have the pathways. And today we are going to be navigating all of that. We're going to navigate polarization and cultivating compassion and happiness that endures. We're going to find the secret and the number one foundation, according to Dr. Post, of happiness, sustainable happiness, which is absolutely wonderful. We're going to go and give you strategies. And by we, I mean Dr. Post is going to give us strategies and step-by-step plan that's really going to be a blueprint for us. And it's going to stick because he's going to put that together with his infinite wisdom and unbelievable experience. He has more knowledge than we can fit into a series of encyclopedias at this point. It's absolutely fantastic. So you learn how to navigate your challenges and to manage conflict in your relationships. And really what I like to talk about when we talk about resilience is removing friction, and the strategies that Dr. Post knows really help to remove that friction, that resistance, so you won't need to be so resilient, so you can use your resources for other things. And so you have a fuller, more expansive life. And this is how we're just getting started. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Post. First, let me say, welcome, Dr. Post. So happy to have you joining us today.
Hi, Dr. Roshanak. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. So I'll tell you a little bit about our amazing Dr. Post. I could go on for hours. So this is the very, 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 very compressed TLDR version of his bio. So Dr. Stephen D. Post, PhD, is a distinguished public speaker renowned for his research on compassionate care and its profound impact on patient outcomes and caregiver well being. As a former board member of the John Templeton Foundation, he received the prestigious Congressional Certificate of Special Recognition for Outstanding Achievement and the Pioneer Medal for Outstanding Leadership in Healthcare. Dr. Post's illustrious career includes serving as a professor at Stony Brook University, where he heads the Center for Medical Humanities, Compassionate Care, and Bioethics. His remarkable contributions spanning over 400 articles, and he's got an amazing new one out recently that has something like 15,000 views already. It's in the top 5% of, um, of searched and cited articles. So he publishes in esteemed journals, and his role as editor in chief for the Encyclopedia of Bioethics is part of his contributions. This underscores his influence in the field, notably his groundbreaking work on Alzheimer's disease ethics, and this book, Dignity, that came out just about a year or so ago. It's amazing. Earned him global recognition, including a designation of his book as one of the medical classics of the 20th century by the British Medical Journal. Post's advocacy has significantly impacted national guidelines on dementia care. He is also celebrated as a best-selling author with his book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People, shedding light on the connection between altruism and happiness. I mean, he is the world's leading authority on the science of giving, on altruism, flourishing, human flourishing. Amazing. He's recognized internationally and hailed as a luminary in positive psychology with a PhD from the University of Chicago and a distinction as a founding fellow of the International Society for Science and Religion. Married for over 4 decades, he and his wife have 2 adult children, and he is the president and founder of the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love. So you can find him. We'll put up the links for www.unlimitedloveinstitute.org and for stephengpost.com, which is his private website. So welcome, Dr. Post. I'm
Well,
so glad you could join us.
it's a lot of fun to be with you. I think I saw you just 2 days ago in
You
New York
did.
at the TikTok Diner on 8th Avenue and 34th Street.
Yes, it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we had a nice time.
It was lovely. So, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for making time. I know you are very, very busy. So let's just jump right into it. Uh, we have lots of questions for you. Um, and by we, I mean me and my audience. So the audience is welcome to drop in their questions. You're joining us from different platforms, from our private viewing room, from Facebook, and from YouTube. So welcome, everybody. So I want to start, since we're talking about happiness, and we had, when we were at the TikTok Diner together, a conversation about the word happiness. And so I'd like to discuss this sort of buzzword and this idea of the fundamental path to happiness. So, first, could you please describe your idea, your definition of happiness for us? Because I love to start with the fundamentals so we're all on the same page. And then, once we understand what happiness is, can you help us to understand this fundamental path that you think is essential to getting us to sustainable happiness?
Those are big questions, and I'm
Of
sure.
course, I don't go small. Would you mind getting a little closer to the speaker? It's hard to hear you.
Okay, I can do that. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, so happiness is an inner sense of peace. It is nothing much more complicated than that. It is the natural outcome of cultivating an inner peace, turning inward, and not being disrupted by a very convoluted, acrimonious world that we have to inhabit, hopefully successfully. But we need to bring the inner self out into the world and not be overwhelmed by it or reactive. We have to respond to it, and always with love as the guiding light. So I don't think of happiness in the kind of simple hedonic terms that some writers do and some researchers do. It's not just a matter of having a wonderful plate of food, although that's very nice and important. Uh, but it's hedonic, but it's also getting into the flow of an immersive activity. If you're an artist or a writer or whatever it might be, um, getting that sense that you're beyond time and place and you're so engaged that your creativity seems infinite. And then finally, thirdly, it's that sense that you've um, you've lived your life well, that you've lived meaningfully, that you've contributed to the lives of others with your gifts and talents. So it's those three elements that I think make up a happy life. It's the hedonic side, that's number one. And number two is the flow. Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote the book
Right.
Flow, was one of my teachers at the University of Chicago when he was writing that book. And then finally, it's this larger sense that, well, my life has been meaningful and lived well. And so Seligman has all those three ingredients
So
in
this is
his.
Dr. Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology.
Yes, Dr. Martin E.P. Seligman. And
Right.
he's an old friend. And I recall getting together with him in about 1998 with Sir John Templeton. And Sir John wanted a great scientist who could help him figure out his laws of life. He had written a book called The Worldwide Laws of Life: Gratitude, Kindness, Humility, and so forth. And the idea was that uh, he wanted to get this to the point where it had scientific credibility. And so Marty Seligman, who had been working on things like um, learned helplessness in dogs and was not particularly satisfied with that anymore. He wanted to go positive. And so, in that context, positive psychology was really born.
Right. So would you help us to understand better
Mhm.
what are the pathways or what is the fundamental pathway to sustainable happiness? Not a happiness that's just coming and going. So I like to talk about happiness and joy as two different things, right? And we discussed this also.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
happiness to me is an emotion, of course, and it's like the waves that are on top of the ocean, right? It comes and it goes. And joy is that deeper stillness that's in the ocean, that is the heart of the ocean.
Ah,
And as we get deeper into the ocean, we find a sense of stability rather than the waves that keep coming and going. And so when we talk about, but people respond to the word happiness and they don't think about the difference between happiness and joy. They think they're the same thing. And maybe they are, but for me, they're not. And so when we're talking about sustainable happiness or joy or bliss, which is the title of our conversation today, is awakening our bliss. And you talked about flow, which is very similar to the sense of awe and ecstasy that we have when we're in a sense of awe and we are more connected to others. Could and we feel so good, right? So
yeah.
it's like a peak experience. So could you help us understand how or why there is this one fundamental pathway that brings us to our joy, which is a sustained happiness?
Yeah. So I look at the word happiness with a certain amount of skepticism, just because it's been
Right.
so widely used and used without much thoughtfulness. So there's the fellow at Harvard who wrote a book called "Stumbling on Happiness," and he says happiness is just a matter of hedonic satisfaction. And then
So
he,
wait, before we go further,
yeah,
sorry, you brought up hedonic, which comes from the word hedonia
mhm.
and hedonism, right? They all go together. So can you please give us a definition of hedonia and eudonia? Because they're different. And
Well,
they're both about, being happy or pleasure.
yeah. So hedonic happiness is really a matter of satisfying the senses, I suppose, more than anything else. And for this gentleman, you would find no happiness in parenthood because he looks at that phase of parenthood when you've got to make sacrifices. You can't just go out to the movies. You can't just go out to the restaurant. You've got to change diapers. You've got to screw up your hours and be up all night sometimes. And so hedonically, he's probably correct that parenthood is not a source of happiness in his sense. But if you broaden out your definition to eudonia, if you will, parenthood is, at least for me anyway, I have two adult kids, is very fulfilling. It means a lot to me. It allows me to feel that I've lived a pretty complete life, and I like to take care of my children. They're again adult now, but and there are sacrifices. But from a flow point of view, when you look down at the crib of a child, you can feel that sense of timelessness. It's just almost infinite. And I suppose that's what grandparents feel when they look at their grandchildren, and they get all uppity about it. And then
So,
also, you can look back over the years and you can feel that, you lived well because you were able to bring life into the world and nurture it meaningfully. So that's the more eudaimonistic type.
so
Hap-
when we're talking about hedonia, it's sort of this pleasure principle. It's this
Yeah.
immediate pursuit of pleasure, of this happiness that is coming through my senses,
Mhm.
that is focused on really just the senses, the sensual enjoyment, right? But
Yes.
you, right. But then eudonia is different because it's this pursuit of not pleasure through my senses, but fulfillment that
Yes.
comes through my spirit and leads to my flourishing and is somewhat related to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self actualization, right?
Yeah. So it's well-being over the course of a lifetime. I mean, Aristotle said that you would never know if you were happy until your last day on earth. And then you would look back
Okay.
and you just have this feeling that, it was worthwhile. There were things that I did that were very, very meaningful and fulfilling and gratifying. But you don't
So,
know that ahead of time necessarily. But when you look back, you have a pretty good sense of it.
but people want to be happy now. And they are interested in self-actualization, but they also want to be happy now.
Mhm.
So a mix and integration, a nice balance is really probably a great way to go forward, right?
Yeah, and flow fits in there well because
Perfect.
again,
Let's talk
most
about
of
that.
us, I mean, I'm in my office here at Stony Brook very often, and I'm always working with medical students, and I'm always working with patients down below in the hospital. I'm always working with great colleagues, but I'm also writing a lot and enjoying research. And so there's a kind of transcendence in my life, a feeling that my activities are really meaningful and sustaining, and again, beyond time and place. I could almost be anywhere. It doesn't really matter too much. Could be New York or Cleveland or Colorado. But so
So,
long as my activity and my creativity is engaged, I'm in good shape. And that's what the Hindus always say, that you have three purposes as a human being. One is love, two is freedom, and three is creativity.
so love, freedom, and creativity.
Yeah, and I am those three things.
Okay. So we need three things to be happy: love, freedom, and creativity. Let's start with that. Now, as
Mhm.
we've talked about hedonia and eudonia and the different ways in which we can be happy and gain pleasure and fulfillment, being both physical and spiritual and non-tractable and tractable, then tell us your opinion or your well researched opinion of what is the fundamental pathway to happiness.
Love.
Okay, let's talk about that.
But along with freedom and creativity, freedom is essential for there to be love. Creativity is a natural outgrowth of love. You want to use your gifts to contribute to the lives of others in meaningful ways. So this is all really very profound and very much the tradition of Buddhism and Hinduism. But sure, for me, that's where it's all at, and I guess that it explains my happy life because I've been so
But we
engaged.
want to, so it's wonderful that you're happy. We love that, but we want to help everybody else get there.
Right.
So let's coming back. What is that fundamental pathway? You say that it is love,
Yes.
right? But there's another one that you said is the foundation of happiness, inner
Well,
peace.
yeah. Well, inner peace and love are really identical
Great.
for the most part.
Help us
So
understand that.
yeah.
Because
So
a lot of people think love is, how you interact with like your romantic partner or your
right.
pet or your,
Right.
so help us understand that.
So my understanding of love really goes back to say getting to know Mircea Eliade and a lot of great historians of religion. Love, by my definition, means this: when the happiness and security of another is as real to me or meaningful to me as my own, and sometimes more so, I love that person. I borrow that a little bit from a great psychiatrist at the University of Chicago by the name of Harry Stack Sullivan. Um, but it's a great definition. And so if you think about it, when you feel that, you can say, is this meaningful to me? Is this real to me as my own, or sometimes more so? Doesn't have to be more so, but that's really what we're talking about. Not the love of chocolate, or not the
Wait,
love
wait,
of.
wait. Back up. You can't start talking about chocolate like that to
I
me.
like chocolate. I'm a chocolate guy. Or the love of designer jeans. I'm okay with
There you
designer
go.
jeans too. I'm not trying to put these things down, but I'm saying that, we're talking about something that's a little deeper than that.
Right.
A lot deeper than that.
So, in a world that is so divisive, where there is so much conflict in relationships, and you've developed something called the Wheel of Love,
Yeah.
can you speak to us about how we can have that kind of, so many people don't even love themselves. They think about themselves and they care about themselves, but they don't love themselves. They don't, probably don't even understand what that really means truly.
Right. Well, it's very hard to love yourself in isolation. I mean, myself is not terribly interesting in a lot of ways.
Well, I'm pretty interesting to me.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that's true. But what really makes life interesting is relationships and what you can contribute to the lives of
Right.
others. This is what Pablo Picasso and Shakespeare said. All of them said, we're happy when we use our gifts
Right.
to help others, to benefit the world. And that's sometimes called a calling, a sense of maybe destiny. It might change a little bit in your life course. It's not necessarily static. So we have callings, not just a calling necessarily. And it's okay to change around a bit, but you want to try to experiment and find your gifts. Everybody, in my view, is a wonder of the universe, including you. Every listener is a miracle of creation because we all have our unique uh, consortium of talents, and we can do great things. And we have to learn how to stick with those. We have to maintain. We have to not just get off track. That's what a good friend is. Aristotle said a good friend isn't just somebody you go out hedonically and have parties with, or
Is
whatever.
it?
Yeah. But a true friend, he said, the highest kind of friend is the one who sees when you're veering off course.
Hmm.
I call that's actually an expression of love. It's a word I coined with the help of M. Scott Peck, who'd written The Road Less Traveled. Um, Carefrontation. I mean, I come to work in the morning and I've already dress rehearsed earlier on. I was up at 5 this morning just thinking about all the people I would encounter, including yourself, on this wonderful show, Mindset, Heartset, Reset. And I was thinking, what do I want to bring into Roshanak's life? And I think it's celebration, and it's helping her to stay on her course, because you devote so much time to this work. And I would not want you to ever get swayed or tempted by something more lucrative necessarily, or
God
maybe
forbid.
possibly more prestigious. I can't believe that,
I just came from all that.
Yeah, yeah. But so that's exactly right. So what you're doing is you're focusing in on the thing that is most meaningful and that feels to you that it draws out your best gifts. So that's
Absolutely. I
important.
think, there are people who can't find their purpose,
Mhm.
and there are people who found their purpose, but they're not living it.
They're not living it.
And that's very difficult when we're talking about happiness from that deep sense, that fulfillment. And I think it's something that bears, it deserves to have a moment. So Neil Donald Walsh, who's
Yeah,
one of the founders of Humanity's Team, he's always saying that we have whatever, it's not like we have one purpose.
right.
We can come with multiple purposes and with different timings, which is what you were just saying about having multiple callings. And I think people get really scared when they think, I don't feel fulfilled. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I don't know what that is.
Right.
So that blocks their happiness. And so, how can someone who hasn't found that quote unquote calling or purpose find their way to deep, sustainable happiness?
That's a very important how-to question.
Right.
And
That's how we do here.
as you look, as you read the newspapers, you'll read about things like the Great Resignation,
Right.
that a lot of people don't want to work anymore because it's just so empty. I mean, you can't sell them on the idea of working 45 or 50 hours a week.
Yeah. Golden
Uh,
handcuffs aren't working anymore either.
yeah, it's not working for them, and it's intergenerational. It's not just young people. And so their attitude towards work is very different, and they want to find their souls. They want to be
Right.
soulfully engaged in work, and that's what callings are about. And how do you find those callings? Well, you have to experiment a bit, and sometimes you have to take a gamble. I mean, I did that when I was about 17 years old. I went out west, and I had really I was taking some risks, but somehow or another, I got on a journey. Joseph Campbell, who was my teacher for many years, who wrote "The Hero with a Thousand Faces," he really believed that you had to have faith in your journey, and
Right.
you don't make your calling, Roshanak. You don't. I don't. I Here I am. I can't say I make my callings. I get on the highway, in my favorite case, Route 80, and I
And
know
you wrote a book called,
God and Love on Route 80, The Hidden
that's
Mystery of
right.
Human Connectedness. And I have really very little idea about who I'm going to encounter. If I say I make my callings, it's really a delusion. What I'm
Yeah.
doing is I'm responding to the wonderful people who come into my life, uh, teachers, mentors, just, and responding with hope and creativity and positivity and love. And that's what it is to find your callings. It's hard to do it alone, but in your soul, you just know that this is your path. And um, and so don't get distracted. A lot of people, a little more money over there, or maybe a little more prestige at that school or that school, but really, just be careful not to lose your callings, and that can happen to people. And if they do, if that happens, I mean, I'm in a medical school here, and I know so many doctors, frankly, all around the country. I was at Case Western for 20 years, and U Chicago and Ann Arbor. So many doctors get burned out,
Oh,
and
yes.
there's even a suicide rate. And
Yes.
but
The
when they
number one reason, it used to be, I don't know if it still is, but the number one reason for defaulting on a medical student loan was death by suicide.
Yeah. So students come to medical school, and they write these beautiful reflective essays about how much they want to be helpful to people, and they're just like, um, uh, they're so energetic and they're so positive, but then somehow or another in passing, they may lose that, and they just get into the sort of the purely external, going through the motions, and not
Well, but
really
also in
having.
the US, we have this narrative that pushes us in that direction.
That's
The
right.
the structures are set up in a way that, and you just wrote this amazing article about touch and human touch and the importance of human touch, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA.
yeah, yeah,
And maybe I'll get that link and we'll put that
yeah,
up.
yeah,
And we need in a day and age where everything is becoming more tech driven, more AI, screens. Now, Gen Z, if we're going to go through generations, is much more savvy
hmm,
as they have grown up with screens and all that we've come to realize and the dangers of spending too much time with screens.
yeah,
And recently, for the first time, the sale of smartphones dropped
hmm,
as the sale of dumb phones went up. You know, these flip phones that do nothing but text and you can talk and that's it. You know, no apps, no nothing else. And so um being aware that we were, this body was designed to connect, and you go back to hedonia and the physical sensations. You know, when we smell something, when we taste something, when we see something beautiful, that can shift us into something spiritual,
yeah,
right? Like a sunset,
hmm,
you know, over the ocean, or the sound of a child laughing, which is part and parcel of the definition of consciousness for us as humans. It's that
yes.
qualia that we can't describe
Mhm.
that makes it extraordinary to have a human experience, right?
So being embodied and being in person with people is incredible. And during the COVID years, which have largely subsided, not entirely so, but almost so, I came into work every day. I did not work from home, and that's because I wanted to be around people. And I would come in these long hallways, and I would uh, smile with people. I'd tell them some silly dad jokes, as you know, I'm capable of doing.
Oh, yes.
Um, Most recently, what did the fish say when it swam into the wall? Damn. So, things like that. But just, I wanted to just be there and not be empathic or even compassionate, but just be, in the simplest sense, kind. Just, so how's it going? How's your family? How are you feeling? Just the little expressions of kindness, and then the kind of back and forth involved there, and always meeting with students and spending time in the clinical settings. So for me, uh, real in-person life is life. And by the way, I mean, when I was a college student at Reed College in Oregon, Steve Jobs slept on my floor. There you go. And he had
You're
not.
mentored by Joseph Campbell. Steve Jobs is
Well,
sleeping on your floor. I mean, who are
he did
you?
sleep on my floor, and there was a course there called Alchemy 101, which was a combination of physics and the history of medieval science. He was great. There was a calligrapher there. Everybody took calligraphy, and he was very good. And he would disappear over the weekends and go up to the apple orchards when all apples were picked by hand. And he would make his money that way and come back with a big sack of apples. That's why apple's apple. But the thing about in-person life, it's irreplaceable. That's how we evolved. I mean, the myth of the Garden of Eden, if you will, is in pretty much every tradition. And look at Sam Ganges in the Lord of the Rings. He's a gardener. He's there and really, truly of the earth. And then he comes back to the Shire, and he gets married, and they have a couple of little kids, and he's happy and he's fine and he's grounded. But Frodo can't do that. He goes off with the elves and Gandalf on a boat, we don't know quite where. So there's something about being real and present that make such a difference. And it's so healing for patients, but also for physicians. When they are more compassionate, when they're able to be empathic, they are happier, they are more fulfilled. And that's
That's true for all of us,
for all
right?
of us, absolutely. For
It's
all of us.
not like just for doctors, not just for
No,
physicians.
no,
All of us, when we connect with each other
right.
in that way, you know, empathically with compassion, that we're really present to each other.
So those are express. So there are lots of. So in my view, following your callings is an expression of love, because what is your calling but something that you love to do because it's so meaningful to you, and you're using your talents optimally, and it's a beautiful thing, and you're forming wonderful relationships, friendships, new friendships based on your callings is a great thing.
Right.
And but also healing with kindness for everybody, not just professionals, but everybody can heal with kindness. So you got to always remember that, and it's that one moment when you are unkind that you can really do a lot of damage. I think Robin Williams had it right when he said something along the lines of, "You never know what burdens people are carrying." So, and of course, he was carrying his own burdens. But but
So,
but those are important things, and so what are also cherishing nature is an expression of love, because when you connect with nature, you get freed up from all of the craziness in our world. I mean, I tell you what I do. I go out on a ferry from Port Jefferson to Bridgeport, Connecticut, round trip, $21. And it's about a 3 hour tour of the beautiful Long Island Sound. And I see the birds and the waves, and I get my cup of tea, and I've got my laptop, and my creativity, my sense of inner peace is sustained because of nature. And now people in psychiatry are talking about nature deficit disorder. Getting back
well, it's been shown that we need 90 minutes of nature per week for optimum physical health. And our physical health and our mental health are very much connected to each other.
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, it's not, the nature deficit disorder is not quite a part of official
Right.
psychiatric nomenclature right now, but it is. It's something that I hear talked about a lot,
Yeah.
and I sometimes hang around the psychiatric emergency rooms on a weekend night just to see what's going on in the world. And I got to tell you, it's horrendous. I have no words that can describe it, and you just feel it somehow or another. Um, it's our being denatured
Yeah, literally.
contributes to that, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Okay. So we've talked about a lot of things. Let's start with strategies and the step by step plan. We promised our audience a blueprint, and we're more than halfway through the show. So let's start digging in. You have the wheel of love. We
yes.
have established so far several things. Number one, that we have multiple callings. Number two, that our callings are connected to our relationships, to
Mhm.
literally our relations with each other. I came to the conclusion of my own volition that we need each other.
Mhm.
We define each other, and we recognize that quite a bit over the pandemic as we became isolated. The meaning that we have ultimately, and scientifically speaking, one of the pathways to having a meaningful life is existential mattering, which is what you do in your life mattering to someone else in their life.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I feel that holds us back is that we think we're not enough. I'm not worthy. I have nothing new to say. I'm not original. Why would anybody be interested in what I'm going to say or what I have to offer? It's all been done before, and it's been done better than I can do. And the truth is that every single person has their unique resonance, just like they have their own unique fingerprints.
Mhm.
And so what I'm saying might resonate with some people, but then what you're saying might resonate with other people. And we might be saying the same topic, the same thing, just in different ways. And so when you think that what you have is not enough, you don't know who's just waiting for you to come along
Agreed.
to fill their cup. They need what you have. And it fills you up to bring forth your gifts and blessings, your creativity, your curiosity, what you have that lights you up. And then for whoever is interested, Even if it's one person, don't fall for the narrative of like millions of people and then it's worthwhile. No, that whatever you're bringing forth then is also lighting up someone else. So it's a win-win situation. You feel better, and then whoever you touch feels better, first of all, and this has been shown scientifically, because you become more patient, you become more
Mhm.
kind, you're less sort of distorting other people because you're less distorted. You're less contorted to fit into somebody else's narrative. The number one regret of the dying is I wish I'd lived a life that was true to myself, not what others wanted for me. And so here you get the opportunity to live the life that you wanted for yourself. And in doing so, not only do you model it for others that liberates them now that you've been liberated, but that also contributes into society, into the world,
Yes.
what you uniquely offer. And you only come along right now as this incarnation,
Yes.
this one point in time for just a few years.
I'm a believer in human uniqueness.
Right.
And
We are, every
and
single one of us, absolutely unique.
yeah,
And
that's so true.
necessary,
And
and
necessary.
necessary.
Yeah. And so that's why the worst thing a teacher can do is to give a student the impression that they don't have some special gifts.
Right.
So for me, I never say no to a student. Never. They come in here with all kinds of ideas for research projects, and it's always a yes. I may have to work with them a little bit and get it fine tuned, but it's always a yes because otherwise you're telling people that somehow or another they're a mistake, and it's humiliating.
Mm-hmm.
And for here's a word for your show: de-dignifying.
Oh boy.
But
So
it is.
Stephen is Dr. Post is like the master of creating words. I love
Yeah,
it.
we need neologisms. So de-dignification is the result of humiliation. So you're going to laugh at me, but I have been known. We met at 8th Avenue and 34th Street on Sunday at 1 o'clock,
New York City.
New York City. And I don't get into New York too much because I'm so busy out here on Long Island. But when I was coming home, I got in my car and I did pull over at a coffee shop just to get a little something for the road. And I saw a kid out there who just seemed so lost. And as I was going into this Dunkin' Donuts, I just said, I walked over to him and I said, you are a wonder of the universe. And he was like shocked. He said, "Don't, what's that? I'm a wonder of the universe." And I said, "You are a miracle of creation."
But statistically, that's true.
That's true.
Mathematically,
Statistically,
scientifically, it's
that's true.
absolutely true.
Yeah,
You have a better
absolutely.
chance of hitting the lottery multiple times
Yeah.
than of being born and surviving.
Yeah. Uniqueness is a reality. And if everybody
Mm.
can have that sense that they have something within themselves that can be discovered and that is beautiful and that can be the source of meaning in their lives, then, hey, all that feeling of emptiness, of despair, that my life isn't worth living, that tends to evaporate. It's not that easy. I mean, that's why finding your calling is important. But all this comes out of love. I mean, again, the sense that the well-being and the happiness and security of another is as real to me as my own. So I was feeling that when I got out of the car, and I said to this kid, "Hey, you are a wonder of
Well,
the
okay.
universe."
Let's get down to business. We now have 15 minutes left. Stephen, I have to keep you on track. You
Sorry.
love telling stories and I love to hear them, and so does the audience, but we promise them a blueprint.
Okay.
We promise them strategies.
Right.
So, back to what I was saying before. What are the different ways to happiness? What are the different ways that are holding us up from happiness? Answering our calling, and our calling comes from relationships.
Yeah.
The three ways that you said that are important are freedom, love, and creativity. And we all need to create. We are all
Yeah.
creators. Everybody wants to be loved. Love is absolutely necessary for our physiological survival, for our brain development as a neuroscientist. I can tell you that. And so it's not this sort of touchy feely, extra, wouldn't it be not? It's necessary for life, but to have sustainable happiness,
you have to have discipline. You
Hold
have to
on.
have a
Hold
practice.
on, Stephen. Hold on. This time I'm going to stop you. We're not going into off another path. Hold on.
Okay.
You had said when we first spoke that absolutely foundational to happiness is inner peace,
Yes.
that we cannot have happiness without inner peace. And you've avoided it this whole conversation. So I'm
Okay.
going to bring you back on track. Now, most people think that when they're happy, they'll have peace. But the truth is, when you get to this inner peace, is when you can be happy.
Yes.
And that has to do with consciousness and awareness,
Mhm.
spirituality. Speak to that for a moment, please.
Well, it's so true. As you know, I mean, I'm an early riser. I've been an early riser since I was
Okay,
15.
but why is it not just about you,
It's
but
for
and how
everybody.
you do it? Right.
Everybody.
No, no, no. I know that, but but what is the foundation that connects happiness and peace, inner peace?
Well, that inner peace is something that you need to cultivate. You do it through meditation, through prayer, through getting out to nature. Oftentimes, when you go to we have a meditational place down the road here, and it's all full of wind chimes and little flowing water and so forth. There's something about nature that brings us away from the pressures and the chaos of the world we live in. We live in a very destructive culture, in my opinion,
Yeah.
and it's hurting people every day
Yes.
and killing them every day.
Yes.
So I'm not uh, bashful about saying that. So for me, everybody, without exception, needs to have some kind of a practice. And for me, it is kind of meditational and sometimes it's prayerful, but it's in the early mornings. And that's because, and this is what the old Jewish rabbis used to say 2,000 years ago, uh, because in the early morning, when you first get out of bed, you don't feel much of a sense of place. You could
Mm-hmm.
be any place. I could be in Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
being a Clevelander by nature and disposition, and you don't have much of a sense of time because the day hasn't started yet. So you're not caught up in chronological time going from point A to point B because you will be over the course of the day, probably to
Right.
some degree. So you want to cultivate this kind of internal life and inner peace early on. And the reason for that, as the Jewish rabbis used to say, but also the Hindus say it, and the Buddhists say it, and the Christians say it, have said it. It's because, however you define this supreme being, I'm not going to use the word God, but you could call it ultimate reality if you're happy with that, or whatever. It is beyond space and time. I mean,
Yes.
in the Hindu writings, before there was a big bang, before there was a universe, there was this being of love, freedom, and creativity. That's where it comes from. Wanting eventually to bring into this universe more beings of love, creativity, and freedom. So in the Hindu tradition, there's this phrase, "Thou art that."
I am
Right?
that.
Yeah, and I think that to take that seriously, but early in the morning when you're also in that zone of not being caught up in all of the things that divert us from those deeper. Now, over the course of the day, I actually have a little. You want a how to? This is my 1 minute hourglass, which I got from the
That's great with a happy face on it.
with a
I
happy
love
face
it.
on it, and this comes from a wonderful spiritual group, the Comoras, and they do a lot at the UN, and they have a peace center upstate. But if you just take twice a day, take something like this, it just not a lot of time, but just pause, just stop everything and connect
Take
with
a
that.
breath.
Breathe deep, breathe deep. And what I teach the medical students here, when you're busy and you're on rounds and you're going from one patient's room to another, stop, meaning stop, breathe deep, just for 30 seconds, 10 seconds. Stop, look. We write articles, stop, look, listen. I mean, actually look at the patient. It's not just a matter of reading charts that print out from a room down the hall.
Right, and then there's a body and there's no connection to that real humanity.
Exactly.
There's a real human there. You rehumanize them because especially in hospitals, they can become dehumanized. You have all these people in the room and they're vulnerable and everybody's talking about them as if they're not a real person, but just this sort of collection of symptoms or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
So stop, look, and listen. And don't interrupt in 15 seconds, which is typical, But then touch, because the art of touch, it's so much a part of classical healing. And there's so much that goes on, even endocrinologically. You would know as a biologist, the hormones that are involved and so forth,
Oxytocin.
oxytocin and others. So there's a lot that goes on
Right.
in human touch. And it's very comforting for people, especially when they're ill. So um, that's what I want our folks to be learning all the time, and structuring that into an environment. It's so important. But
So,
yeah, kindness heals. So kindness, everybody can heal with kindness.
okay, hold on. Getting ahead of ourselves. So, we start with inner peace
Right.
being that foundation, and how we can cultivate that inner peace, as you like to say, is through retreat.
Right. Yes.
Because the world can be so chaotic, crazy, acrimonious, as you said, to quote you, um, it is absolutely necessary to retreat from time to time. And if you think you have no time, and as you said, a friend of mine also taught me, who's incredibly busy, incredibly financially wealthy, incredibly spiritually wealthy. And he says, on the hour, I take 1 minute.
Hmm.
Anybody can take 1 minute, 60 seconds.
Yeah.
You close your door or whatever. And for 60 seconds, you just stop. And here's what he taught me:
Yeah.
you give gratitude for the hour that just passed and all the blessings that you received from that hour.
Hmm.
And you center your awareness and ask for blessings for the hour to come.
Nice.
And that takes 60 seconds. And in connecting to that, first you retreat. So
Hmm.
it's a reset because we have these like runaway thoughts. And as you said, we can get pulled and pushed in many directions. It is the month of Ramadan in Islam when you pray 5 times a day. Um, those prayers are at times to recenter you.
Yes.
First thing in the morning, before the sunrise, like you said, when you're still almost in a hypnagogic state, almost like the lucid dreaming, you're just
Hmm.
coming out of that spiritual state of sleep.
Yes.
And then at noontime, right, when you're most likely to have gotten, whatever's going on in the first hours of the day and thrown you off course.
Yes.
And in the afternoon, recenter again. At the end of the day at sunset, you pray again
Hmm.
to center you. It's almost like a closure of the day,
Yeah.
and then into the evening.
Yeah.
Now you're recentered when you go home and you deal with your family and friends.
Yes.
And then finally in the evening before you sleep. All these moments to recenter, they
Yeah.
are connections, which is what salat is in
So
the
my
Arab,
my
right?
little gizmo here says just a minute.
Exactly. So it
That's the
can
Brahma
be
Kumaras, and they're not Hindu. They're kind of an evolution of Hinduism in their own views, but just a minute, and it doesn't take more than that. But I like
right.
what your friend
It
is
can
doing.
be as little as 60 seconds,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
And also it's, you can, people think I need 20 minutes, half an hour to meditate, or I don't know how to meditate, or I don't like, you can just sit and breathe, which resets your biology, right? Puts
yes,
you into parasympathetic tone,
yes,
right? Rest and digest state, brings you down from the stress.
yeah,
Those deep breaths can help to offload carbon dioxide
yeah,
and decrease cortisol,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
all biology. It's all connected to each other.
It's all connected, and setting
Right.
it up early in the morning when I mean when I get going at work, it's just pretty busy for me. But I set it up very carefully in the morning, and so I keep an old style book of my schedule. See all these people I'm
Right.
going to
So
be
it's like a
encountering.
brain dump. You don't have to hold it in your head.
Yeah, I mean, I know pretty much what's ahead of me during the day, and so when I'm doing this early morning
Wait, wait,
exercise,
before you talk about it, I want people to understand what you're about to explain.
mm,
So the first thing that you said is to retreat. And you talked about this at the top of the show too. And we only have a few more minutes left, so we
mm,
really have to get through this. But with clarity, and the clarity is that you take that retreat, doesn't take long. But if you do an early morning practice, and I believe this is part of your wheel of love, what you can do is to as you're talking about your schedule, you are preparing for the day and preparing to love and
yes,
preparing to be present, right? Is this what you're about to explain to us?
exactly. And I'm thinking about all the key people I know I'm going to meet, and what I think maybe they need the most as a manifestation of love. Because if I walk around this medical school talking about love, it's some people are going to react to it because they don't know what I'm talking about. But if I talk about the manifestations of love, maybe somebody's got a project and they need some creative help, and celebrate. Maybe they would need some celebration. They have a birthday coming up and everybody's ignored them, so maybe I'll try that with a cake, or maybe
Nothing wrong with cake.
yeah, nothing wrong with cake. Or maybe they need
Chocolate
confrontation.
cake.
Maybe they're just not kind of, on track, and I need to try to help them with that. Sometimes they've suffered a lot. They've lost a loved one. They need compassion. I could have a doctor come in here, which I had a few months ago, and just knock on the door and sit down and tell me that his son had died of an overdose. And so you know, they need compassion, but he also needed a lot of self-forgiveness. So you have to
Mhm.
kind of think about the people you're going to encounter, and you and what form of love. Because I mean, loyalty. I mean, a lot of people, they're panicky about relationships because there's so little loyalty in our culture. I've been married 43 years. Can you believe that?
God bless.
Yeah. And I don't say that just to, you know, say that's great, because I mean it's difficult, but I believe in loyalty, and I believe in sticking with people, and I have a wonderful wife, happens to be from Kyoto, and she's very thoughtful, and she tolerates me well, but she says I'm unembarrassable. So there you go. Anyway,
Okay.
but I think you
So
have to think
so
about the
thinking
people
about
who,
what somebody might need before you even start your day.
yeah, envision it in detail. I mean, just with your eyes closed, just think, so I mean, I'm going to make this phone call to so and so in Rochester, uh, a little later on this afternoon, and I'm thinking already from the morning what they need to hear from me and what
And
I need
this
to.
isn't an obsessive thinking of, "Oh my god, what am I going to say?"
No, 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 no.
This is centering on what they might need so that you can be most present in love
Yeah,
with them.
and attentive and listening, because I mean, I may not be able to anticipate things well, but usually I'm in the ballpark, and that's just maybe an intuitive thing, or just because you have iterated relationships, as they say in game theory. Uh, so that's what I try to do, and it works well. It's not perfect. Like so, there's a when I drive to work, there's a stoplight. Oh my God, on 25A, and then I have to turn south on Nichols Road. No, no tests for your audience on this, but it's a long light, and you really don't have to stop early for it. You can kind of get through it. But if someone in front of me stops unnecessarily, I know it's another 15 minutes for me. And I'm capable of just, falling full chested on my horn, and even yelling out a mild expletive, usually not a
You?
bad one. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, just, something like what that fish said
That's
when it
okay.
swam into the wall.
Right.
Um, okay, and so you're going to have moments when the world is going to break into you a little bit, and you maybe going to be more reactive than you should be. And so you want to. That's where mindfulness comes in over the course of the day. You have to be mindful of your emotional state, and deeply aware of sort of what what things are bringing out in you. Um, but that's
And
what
this
I
is the
do,
awareness that's connected to inner peace.
and that's inner peace. And if you can live in inner peace, you will live a happy life.
Okay, we are over time, so we got to get right through this. There are 6 steps, 6 dimensions in the wheel of love. And so now, just to sort of recap, in order to have sustainable happiness, we need to connect to love, which is necessary for our health, physically, mentally, emotionally, obviously spiritually, because love is the divine. We our foundational pathway to happiness is through inner peace,
Mhm.
and inner peace and love are basically one and the same in their kernel truth. And to get to that, we have to retreat from
Yes,
time to time from the world to
yes.
reset.
Every
And
day,
in the
every day.
right
Don't miss a
every
day.
day, and during the day several times
Yes,
if we
yes.
can. And during the early morning retreat, we can set ourselves up and set our day up and set our interactions with people up
Hmm.
so that they can be, let's call them, joyful,
Yeah,
because there is connection, because there is intention of love.
right.
And so, as we talk about this wheel of love, could you tell us, could you list the 6 dimensions for us on
Yeah,
this wheel of love
yeah,
that brings us the blueprint to sustainable happiness?
yeah. So that's what why good things happen to good people is all about. How to live a
Yes.
longer, happier life.
Famous, fantastic book. You know, we're always saying, oh, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, good things happen to good people.
Yeah, I mean, in any kind of a functional environment. I mean, there are certain environments where the niche is just so negative that, the cynics are right. No good deed goes unpunished. But basically, the hub of the wheel is this idea of love, that the happiness and security of others is as meaningful to me as my own, and sometimes more so. That's how I come at the day. And then how does it get expressed? Well, sometimes it's forgiveness. Sometimes it can be humor, a little mirth. You can reverse somebody's negative struggles and attitude in a millisecond with a tasteful dad joke. Okay,
So
listening.
I just want people to know that I put up the link to your site, which has all your books on it, right?
Okay, yeah, the way of listening is the way of creativity. Um, the way of loyalty. I'm just looking at these things. They all hold up, even after 15 years. The way of courage. Mahatma Gandhi said that you can't have love without courage, and you can't, especially if you're an activist. If you're doing things like many of our students are doing to get health care to disenfranchised communities, you've got to have some courage to do that kind of thing and do it well. And so these are all a way of generativity of if you can just especially when you get a little older, thinking about how you could nurture and generate a good life for somebody who's a little younger than you are. The way of celebration is very important. You want to be saying
I think that's
good.
more than 6, though.
Well, that's right. I mean, there are actually 9 in here,
Okay. So
but
there
you
are 9 dimensions to the wheel of love.
yeah, 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 yeah. But you do want to be saying to people that what they do is good. You have to celebrate their activities. I mean, I have a colleague who just can't realize that. I mean, you know the old saying, well, you should say 2 positive things before you make a critical comment, and it should be a carefrontational, not a confrontational. I don't believe in confrontation. And by the way, I have no enemies. The idea of loving your enemy, forget it. I only have adversaries.
All right.
And I
Can you
love
tell
and
us the difference between an enemy and an adversary?
well, an enemy is, when you say love your enemy, it's almost like you've got to think in your mind, who the hell is my enemy? you know, but we all have adversaries. We have
But what is the difference between an enemy and an adversary?
an adversary brings out the best in you.
Okay.
That's what an adversary does.
The Dalai Lama said he loved in the Joy of the Art of Happiness. It
Yeah,
was from decades ago. It was a fantastic book. He said he loved his enemies because until somebody came along to challenge
yeah,
him, everything that he thought he was and that he developed was just in theory
yeah,
and
yeah,
not in practice. You can't
and
truly know yourself in
yeah,
practice
yeah.
until someone comes and challenges you, which is what you're calling an adversary.
That's, the adversaries are good. So I've survived in four different great medical schools over like 40 years. And don't you think I've had adversaries?
Yes.
I mean, especially with the stuff that I'm interested in. I'm not just interested in bioethics, to use a feeding peg for a 90-year-old guy with dementia, but I'm really much more interested in formation, in the spiritual and emotional formation. And and so, a couple of years ago, we actually got the national award from Alpha Omega Alpha, which is the biggest medical association in the country in terms of education, because of all of our innovative curricula to help students gain insight into their emotional states and to be able to be mindful and all those kinds of things and interact in ways that can be observable with patience in compassion. So that's what I like to do. Now, there are a lot of people just think that's they actually 10 years ago, I think most people here even thought that was gobbledygook, but not anymore.
So so adversaries are important
Yes.
to help us
Grow.
grow, and growth makes us happy.
And growth makes us happy. And we
So
feel
adversaries make us happy.
they make
Look
us
at
happy.
that.
So the reason you love so they say, I say
Well,
love
wait,
your
wait,
ad.
wait, but this is so important because that shift. I mean, you're just flying over this, and people need
Huge.
to stop for a second. That's
Yeah.
right. Our mindset, I can tell you this as a neuroscientist,
Yeah.
how you think things will bias your experience of them
Yeah.
and what you can get out of your experiences.
Yes.
So, whether or not you will respond with joy or happiness or with anger. So, if your expectation, that's another word for mindset,
Uh-huh.
if your expectation is that you're going to either win or learn, as is the famous quote,
Mhm.
then you don't say, oh my God, here's this person. This is my adversary. This is my enemy. I'm really upset. I'm scared. I'm worried. I have anxiety, right? Instead, it's an opportunity, and you can get from that opportunity, at the very least,
Right.
something that will make you happy, which is this deep engagement that allows you to grow and to heal.
Right.
Because what is growth if not healing back into love?
Right. Absolutely. So you have to appreciate your adversaries. You really don't have any enemies if you see them rightly. And also, here's another thing that I live by. Life is an expanding canvas. You're going to run into difficult patches. Like Jackson Pollock painting out on the eastern end of Long Island, just throwing a gob of gooey looking paint on the canvas on the
And
barn
then getting
floor.
in there.
Yeah, but by the time he covered it up with these beautiful energetic lines, which were full of psychic energy, it was a thing of beauty, and it belongs in the museum. And so you have to take every adversity in life, and you have to expand the canvas, like Jackson Pollock did. That's what you've got to do, and you can always expand the canvas. There's nothing that is unexpandable.
So, one of the other ways, just because we wanted to give this blueprint, so just reading off, as you did earlier, we have creativity, love, compassion, um, ge-
Listening,
listening, generating, right? Taking care of those who are
generativity,
coming after, being
just small
generative,
helping actions,
right? And
mirth.
mirth is, of course, joy itself. Laughter, very important.
Laughter
But
is
tell
key.
us tell us about altruism as the way to happiness, because people are so hunkered down. They're like, I'm done. I'm just going to take what I can and run.
Yeah.
But
Well,
how can altruism, which is giving with absolutely no expectation of anything in return, although our bodies get the reward in our psyches. Please speak to us about, as the world's foremost expert on the science of giving, how is altruism good for our physical, mental, psychological, spiritual health? How do we first benefit from giving,
Yeah,
as opposed to saying, forget it, I'm just taking?
yeah. So altruism doesn't need to be extreme, and it's not just an external action. It's the kindness underlying the altruism that really makes the big difference. And
Okay.
you don't have to go
That's
to,
the secret ingredient.
yeah, that's the ingredient. You don't have to go to a mountaintop in Colorado, great place, and
Where Humanity's Team is
yes,
located, by the way.
that's right. I know that we talked, but so thanks, Jim. So you don't have to go meditate for 4 months with advanced Tibetan Buddhists. Although we did a study with them through UC Davis, but and it can affect there are lots of biomarkers and the like, and but the main thing is that this is the James Lang theory of emotional transition. They say smile even if you don't feel happy. That actually works. The musculature feeds into your emotional centers. You know this, and so if
Yep.
you just get into the action of, so we did a
So
great,
taking action, something as simple as smiling, which sends the signals to your brain,
yeah,
because these particular, this conformation of your muscles
yeah,
tells your brain, in almost all cases, that you are in a good state.
it does, yeah,
So when we are physically moving our bodies around, we are signaling to our brains, because our brains and our bodies are, which are our brains are in our bodies, central servo, in constant communication. So
yeah,
certain postures, certain movements, because we have learned
mhm,
that these this pattern of musculature means safety, health, whatever is good for us, then you can actually leverage your movement, your body,
right,
to put you in that good state.
yeah. So case in point, when I moved from Cleveland to New York 15 years ago, it was an awkward situation leaving Cleveland, and we loved Cleveland, but I had to do it for job reasons. And I was not happy. I wasn't happy for at least a year. And I was probably angry at a certain couple of individuals. And the way I handled that was I just made every effort to come into this building and with my family and with certain organizations around Stony Brook to just do everything I could to help people. So I made the extra effort, and then between that and then time passing, because then what you do, the AA people are good at this. You sort of reinterpret, maybe I could have handled that a little different. Maybe I shouldn't just be pointing the finger at somebody else. Maybe if I had said something better, and that's always true. So we bear joint responsibility for even these difficult moments. So for me, altruism is a way of solving problems. It's also deeply other regarding, and for me, because I'm so Hindu and so into the oneness of mind, when I help someone else, I'm helping myself inevitably, right? And I don't think genetics can explain why that guy jumped off the subway platform in New York some years ago and covered the body of a fellow who had fallen down on the tracks and lived to tell a story. I think it was because at some level, although it's a mystery, this is Sir John Eccles, my teacher at Chicago, who said that ultimately he was a great physiologist, a neurophysiologist.
Yeah.
He figured out everything we know basically about the structure of synaptic communication. But he always said that our minds are a mystery.
Hmm.
And
Our
and
brain is not our mind, right? You
our
don't tell someone, I'm going to give you a piece of my brain,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you would say, I'm going to give you a piece of my mind,
yeah, yeah.
right?
So so
Well,
so
but what is the mind?
when you help other people, a really quick thing here. So in Ohio, this wonderful neurologist Joe Foley and I went to a geriatric psychiatric hospital in Mount Vernon, middle of Ohio. There was a community of Hindu nurses aides that were living there. We went into a special unit there with about 45 or 50 people living in there. They were all over 50 and they all had Down syndrome. And as you know, people with Down syndrome who hit their 50s, they pretty much have the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, and their behavior can be very difficult. So we were in there, and it was crazy. And then this group of 5 or 6 wonderful Hindu nurses walked in. The whole place calmed down. It was like a miracle. I mean, these Hindu nurses, they knew that they were wonders of the universe, and they had
Mm.
found their callings. So there they were in the middle of
Beacons of
Ohio.
light, as Dr. Doty said.
Yeah,
Yes.
everybody quieted down. And then Joe and I, who was a very famous neurologist, we took a couple of them to a pizza restaurant in Gambier, Ohio, where Kenyon College is and where Paul Newman used to hang out. And we got some pizza. And Joe and I asked them, so what, what makes you care so meticulously and so lovingly for these individuals? Because they're not easy to handle. And what they said was namaste. Right. I mean,
Ah,
I honor the divine in you
right.
as you honor the divine in me. That we all have this
Yeah.
one mind. And as Schrodinger said, there is only one mind, quote unquote. And Sir John Templeton used to write letters to all his investors, and he would say Christmas cards. By the way, he would say, "Do you realize that your mind is a gift?
Wow.
It's not necessarily just cells and tissue and so forth. There may actually be a mystery to the mind, and I'm
There
a
is,
believer.
of
I
course.
think that's true. So if you can live that way, like those Hindu nurses, they found their calling. They're living in love. They have a practice, and they're consistent over time. How could they not be happy?
Right. Okay. We are well over time.
Oh no.
I'm going to ask the question that Jacqueline and I love to ask of every guest before we end the show, and that is the what we like to call the get off the couch moment. So, for everybody who's sitting, watching, listening, what can they do right now? We've given them a lot of insights, step by step ideas of how to start the day, what to do throughout the day to be happy, to connect to joy, to be in that beautiful state, to improve their relationships, to connect to their adversaries in love. But sitting down right now on the couch, what do I need to do? What action should I take today, now, to get off the couch and get into a better state, to get into that sustainable happiness? What's the one thing that you would recommend?
You can do a lot of different things. You can write a letter to an old friend who you know is lonely. Uh,
Lovely.
yeah, you can do that. You can get on the phone and call that person too. You can uh, go out to the corner and tell somebody that they're a wonder of the universe.
There you go.
That actually, I was so happy when I did that. I felt completely elated. I mean, all my problems, all the things I was worrying about, totally disappeared
Of
because I
course.
walked up to this teenager who looked pretty despondent and maybe drugged up, and I said, "You know, you're a wonder of the universe." And he was like, he lit up like this. It was great, you know.
Lifting others up always lifts us up, right?
Yeah, and that's what you, yeah. When you lift others up, you are inevitably uplifted, and that's the secret to happiness. But it's a secret of love. You have to be cultivating that part of your heart and your soul, and make that your priority, your biggest priority every day. And it's not a strain. It's not stressful. It's actually great.
Cultivate your heart
Yeah,
every
there's
day.
no better way to live.
So the get off the couch moment is to write a letter to an old friend or call them or go up to a total stranger, in particular someone who looks like they might need it,
Yeah,
and tell them that they're a wonder of the universe.
yeah. If they don't slap you, you'll be okay.
Can you give us something that would be a little safer just in case?
um, yeah. Well, I mean, just make a little more of an effort
Yes.
to be warm and kind to your family. That's so important. I mean, having a stable family matters a lot in life.
Yeah.
When you get into when you're driving to work, don't fall full chested on your horn and yell out some not so bad expletive. Try to be
I
mindful,
love it.
you know.
Being mindful, yes.
Yeah.
The
And
Harvard Study for Adult Development as you were saying, showed after thousands of
Mhm.
um, recordings and tests and decades of study that the number one single most influential variable for our happiness, health, longevity, all of it is good, stable relationships.
Yeah, yeah, and adverse childhood experiences are very destructive, but not determinatively so.
That's right.
I mean, if
They
you
can be overcome.
yeah, Jerome Kagan, this used to make this point with me quite a lot. I knew him pretty well. He said, "You may have adverse childhood experiences, but realize that you can get involved in a community as a young person.
So
You can
community is
marry a
beautiful.
compassionate, understanding soulmate, uh, and lots of
Easier said than done.
easier said than done. That's right. But you're not necessarily determined by the early life, although it can make things a little more challenging for you, I would say.
Right. But it's more opportunity to grow and
Yes.
into love.
Yeah.
So great. Thank you so much, Dr. Stephen Post. Really appreciate you making the time to join us today and to
Okay.
give us all that information. And for those like Teal, who's sending these beautiful notes on YouTube, if you can't find your calling, if you don't know your calling, you want to find your way to happiness and joy. Just so it turns out that connecting to other people and these relationships will help us in each calling as it comes and make us happy for that experience and interaction. Is that right, Dr. Post?
I think that's very true. Yes. Yes.
Beautiful. So
Yes.
thank you very much again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with Dr. Stephen G. Post, you can go to stephenpost.com. Is that right?
Yes. StephenGPost.com.
StephenGpost.com. We also have, and we had it up earlier, the unlimitedloveinstitute.org, or you can go to stonybrook.edu/bioethics.
Yeah.
So there we go. It's right up there on the screen again. Unlimited Love Institute and Stephen G. Post. You can find the amazing books like this one, Dignity.
For deeply forgetful people.
Is another way of saying dementia is deeply forgetful. You
Yeah.
and your neologisms, I love them. And
I'm
and
deeply
why good things
forgetful
happen to good people.
on
And
certain days. I can't remember where my car is in the parking lot.
happens to all of us.
Yeah, it happens to all of us.
So it's a beautiful thing that we have all these different strategies and step-by-step um, variables and plans that we can take everyday living in the world as it is and turn it into something that is beautiful for us, sustainable for us, enjoy, and that allows us, with the ripple effect, to directly and indirectly influence others,
Yeah.
as people want to be influencers so much right now,
Yeah.
into being happiness influencers.
Yeah.
I'm going to coin that one.
Yeah. Expand the canvas.
Expand the canvas, everybody. And we've got our get off the couch moment with like multiple get off the couch actions. So I encourage you to go connect with somebody now, tell somebody they're a wonder, call somebody, write a letter, and live your calling. And thank you everybody for joining us who have joined, those of you who have joined us live, and for your questions and comments. For those of you who are listening afterwards, thank you for listening. Everybody, thank you for spending the time with us. We really appreciate it, and we hope that this has served you well and resonated with you. We are continuing our Increasing Happiness series, not next week, Tuesday, which is our regular day. Exceptionally, next week, instead of March 19th, it'll be March 21st, Thursday, and we'll have Dr. Ilya Gurguris with us, and the topic will be Portal to Happiness. So we hope that you will join us next week with Dr. Ilya and continue on learning how to increase happiness in your lives, for yourselves, and for all of your loved ones, and for the rest of the world. God bless. Namaste.
Namaste.
And we hope to see you next week. Thank you so much, Dr. Post.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roshanak.